The rain hammered against the windshield of Rose Martinez's weathered pickup truck as she navigated the winding mountain road. At 34, she had driven this route countless times, but tonight felt different. The storm had come out of nowhere, transforming the familiar path into a treacherous maze of mud and rushing water. Rose's veterinary clinic sat nestled in the valley below, a modest building that had become the heart of their small mountain community. For the past 6 years, she had poured her soul into caring for every animal that came through her doors. From prize-winning show horses to three-legged strays that nobody else wanted, her philosophy was simple. Every life mattered, regardless of the owner's ability to pay. Tonight, she was returning from the Morrison Ranch where she had delivered twin calves in the middle of the storm. The grateful rancher had pressed $50 into her hand, though she knew he could barely afford it. Times were tough for everyone in Cedar Falls, but somehow they all managed to look out for each other. As her headlights swept around a sharp curve, Rose saw something that made her heart stop. A sleek black sedan had careened off the road, its front end wrapped around a massive pine tree. Steam rose from the crumpled hood, and one headlight flickered weakly in the darkness like a dying star. Without hesitation, Rose pulled over and grabbed her emergency kit from the truck bed. Years of treating injured animals had taught her to act quickly in crisis situations. She approached the wreckage cautiously, her boots squelching in the muddy gravel. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely audible over the storm. "Can anyone hear me?" A weak groan came from inside the vehicle. Rose peered through the spider-webbed windshield and saw a man slumped over the steering wheel, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. In the passenger seat, a beautiful golden retriever whimpered softly, its left paw held at an awkward angle. "It's okay," Rose said, her voice taking on the calm, soothing tone she used with frightened animals. "I'm here to help. I'm a veterinarian. And I know some human first aid, too." The man lifted his head slowly, his eyes unfocused but alert. He appeared to be in his mid-40s, with salt-and-pepper hair and expensive clothes that were now torn and muddy. Despite his disoriented state, there was something dignified about him, something that spoke of a life far removed from this rural mountain road. "My dog," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Is Copper okay?" Rose's heart warmed at his first concern being for his pet. She quickly assessed both patients through the shattered passenger window. The man had a head injury and possibly a concussion, but he was conscious and breathing normally. The dog's paw was clearly broken, and it was shivering from shock and cold. "I need to get you both out of here," she said, already formulating a plan. "The rain's getting worse, and this car isn't safe." Working with gentle efficiency, Rose managed to extract both the man and his dog from the wreckage. The stranger leaned heavily on her shoulder as she helped him to her truck, while Copper whimpered in her arms. Despite his obvious pain and confusion, the man kept asking about his dog's condition. "He's going to be fine," Rose assured him, as she settled them both in her truck's cab. "But that paw needs immediate attention, and you need to get checked out too. I can treat Copper at my clinic, and then we'll get you to the hospital."
Ow.
Man nodded gratefully, cradling his injured pet. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "I'm Vincent... Vincent Brooks." Rose noticed his slight hesitation, as if he were choosing his words carefully. "Rose Martinez," she replied, starting the engine. "And don't worry about thanks. This is what neighbors do for each other." As they drove through the storm toward her clinic, Rose couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was going to change everything. She had always believed that kindness was its own reward, but she had no idea that her simple act of compassion had just set in motion a chain of events that would transform not only her life, but the entire community of Cedar Falls. The storm raged on. But inside the warm cab of her truck, Rose felt a strange sense of peace. She had done what came naturally to her, helped those in need without expecting anything in return. It was a philosophy that had guided her entire life, and tonight would prove to be no exception. Little did she know that the mysterious stranger, sitting beside her, clutching his injured dog, is about to become the catalyst for the most extraordinary chapter of her life. The fluorescent lights of Rose's clinic cast a warm glow as she carefully examined Copper's injured paw. The golden retriever lay still on the examination table, his trusting brown eyes fixed on his owner, who sat nearby with a bandaged head, and a cup of hot coffee. "Clean break, but it should heal perfectly with proper care," Rose announced, gently wrapping the splint. "He'll need to stay off it for about 6 weeks, but dogs are remarkably resilient." Vincent Brooks, though Rose suspected that wasn't his real name, watched her work with fascination. Over the past 3 hours, she had treated both him and Copper with a level of care that went far beyond professional duty. She had cleaned and dressed his head wound, monitored him for signs of concussion, and even insisted he'd eat some homemade soup she kept in her clinic's small kitchen. "You have a remarkable facility here," Vincent said, his eyes taking in every detail. The clinic was modest but immaculate, with state-of-the-art equipment that must have cost a fortune. Yet he noticed the worn linoleum floors, the second-hand furniture, and the collection jar by the reception desk labeled "Emergency Fund for Families in Need." Rose smiled as she finished Copper's bandaging. "It's not much, but it's home. My dad was a veterinarian too, and he always said that healing happens best in a place filled with love. Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was." Rose's expression grew distant. "He passed away 5 years ago, left me this place and a mountain of debt. But I couldn't imagine doing anything else." Vincent studied her carefully. In his world, of corporate boardrooms and luxury penthouses, he had learned to read people quickly. Rose Martinez was genuine in a way that seemed almost impossible in modern society. She had spent her entire evening caring for 2 strangers, asking nothing in return, and he could see genuine joy in her eyes when she talked about her work. "You mentioned debt," he said carefully. "Business must be challenging in a small town." Rose laughed, but there was no bitterness in it. "That's putting it mildly. Half my clients pay in vegetables or firewood, and the other half I treat for free because they can't afford to pay at all. But somehow we manage. The community looks out for each other." As if summoned by her words, the clinic door chimed, and an elderly woman entered, shaking rain from her umbrella. She was followed by a young mother carrying a cardboard box. "Rose, honey," the older woman called out, "I'm sorry to bother you. So late, but Emma's cat got into a fight with something, and it's bleeding pretty bad." "Of course, Mrs. Patterson. Bring him right back." Rose turned to Vincent. "I'm sorry, but don't apologize," Vincent said quickly. "Mind if I observe? I'm finding this fascinating." For the next hour, Vincent watched Rose work with 3 more emergency patients: the injured cat, a dog that had eaten something toxic, a baby rabbit that local children had found injured by the roadside. With each case, she displayed the same level of dedication and skill, treating each animal as if it were the most important patient in the world. What struck him most was how the community rallied around her. Mrs. Patterson insisted on staying to help clean up. The young mother with the cat left a fresh-baked pie as payment. The children who brought the rabbit had collected their allowance money in a mason jar, even though Rose gently refused to accept it. "This is how it works here," Rose explained when the last patient had been treated. "We take care of each other. Money changes hands when it can, but kindness is the real currency." Vincent found himself deeply moved by what he had witnessed. In his business empire, every transaction was calculated. Every relationship measured by profit margins and strategic advantage. Here in this small mountain clinic, he had seen something he thought was extinct, a community bound together by genuine care and mutual support. "Rose," he said as she locked up the clinic, "I need to ask you something. Why did you stop for me tonight?" "You don't know me. It was dangerous weather and you had no obligation to help." Rose paused, considering the question seriously. "My father used to say that we're all just walking each other home. Sometimes the path is easy, sometimes it's treacherous, but we're all heading to the same destination. When someone falls down along the way, you help them up. It's that simple." Vincent nodded slowly, understanding that he had encountered something far more valuable than any business deal or investment opportunity. He had found someone who still believed in the fundamental goodness of humanity, who lived that belief every single day. "I should probably get you to the hospital now," Rose said. "That head injury needs proper medical attention." "In a moment," Vincent replied. "First, I want you to know that what you did tonight, what you do every day, it matters. More than you realize. You've reminded me of something I thought I'd lost forever." As they prepared to leave for the hospital, Vincent made a silent promise to himself. This woman, this community, they deserve something extraordinary in return for their extraordinary kindness. He didn't know exactly what yet, but he knew that his life had been changed by a stranger who had stopped to help on a dark, stormy night. The seeds of transformation had been planted, and Vincent Brooks, whose real name was Vincent Blackwood, the wealthiest man in America, was already beginning to formulate a plan that would change Cedar Falls forever. Detective Marcus Webb had been the sheriff of Cedar Falls for 15 years, and he prided himself on knowing every person, every vehicle, and every story in his small mountain community. So when he received the call about an abandoned luxury sedan wrapped around a pine tree on Mountain View Road, his curiosity was immediately piqued. The morning sun revealed details that the storm had hidden the night before. The vehicle was a brand new Mercedes S-Class, worth more than most people in Cedar Falls made in 3 years. But it was the license plate that made Marcus's blood run cold. A custom California plate that ran a quick check revealed was registered to Blackwood Industries. Marcus knew that name. Everyone in America knew that name. Vincent Blackwood was one of the most powerful tech billionaires in the world, a man whose companies employed hundreds of thousands of people and whose innovations had changed how the world communicated. What was he doing on a back road in rural Colorado? The detective examined the wreckage more carefully. Personal belongings were scattered throughout the interior. An expensive watch, platinum credit card, and a leather portfolio containing documents that confirmed his suspicions. This wasn't just any wealthy traveler. This was Vincent Blackwood himself. But where was he now? Marcus drove straight to Rose's clinic, his mind racing with possibilities. He found her in the back room, preparing medications for the day's appointments. Humming softly to herself, she looked up with a smile when he entered. "Morning, Marcus. What brings you by so early?" "Said accident last night," he said carefully. "The man you help? Did he tell you his name?" "Vincent Brooks," Rose replied. Without hesitation, nice man, very concerned about his dog. "Why? Is something wrong?" Marcus studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. Found none. Rose Martinez was many things: kind, dedicated, stubborn when it came to helping others, but she was also completely honest. If she said the man had introduced himself as Vincent Brooks, then that's what he had told her. "Rose, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Are you absolutely certain that's the name he gave you?" "Of course I'm certain. Marcus, you're making me nervous. What's going on?" Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a photo from the internet, a professional headshot of Vincent Blackwood from a recent business magazine cover. "Is this the man you helped last night?" Rose's eyes widened in recognition. "Yes, that's him." "But Marcus, this says his name is Vincent Blackwood, not Brooks, and it says he's." She squinted at the screen. "A billionaire. That can't be right." "I'm afraid it is right," Marcus said gently. "Rose, you didn't just help any stranded traveler last night. You helped one of the wealthiest men in America." Rose sank into her chair, her mind reeling. "But he seemed so ... normal. I mean, he was clearly well-educated and refined, but he was just a man worried about his injured dog. He didn't act like someone famous or important." "Maybe that's exactly why he didn't tell you who he really was," Marcus suggested. "Think about it. When was the last time someone like Vincent Blackwood could just be treated like a regular person? You helped him because you saw someone in need, not because you recognized his name or his wealth." As the implications sank in, Rose felt a mixture of emotions. Part of her was embarrassed that she hadn't recognized someone so famous, but a larger part of her felt oddly proud. She had treated Vincent Blackwood exactly as she would have treated anyone else, with compassion, respect, and genuine care. "What do we do now?" she asked. Marcus considered the question carefully. "That depends on what you want to do. I could contact his company, let them know where he is. I'm sure they're looking for him, or ... or what. Or we could respect his privacy. He obviously chose not to reveal his identity for a reason. Maybe he's tired of being Vincent Blackwood, the billionaire, and just wants to be Vincent Brooks. It's the man with the injured dog." Rose nodded slowly. It did seem like he was carrying a heavy burden. "When I was treating Copper, I watched him relax for the first time since I found him, like he could finally just breathe. The question is, Marcus continued, what happens when his people inevitably find him? 'Cause they will find him? Rose. Men like Vincent Blackwood don't just disappear without the entire world looking for them. As if summoned by their conversation, the distant sound of helicopter rotors began to echo through the valley. Marcus and Rose exchanged glances and stepped outside to see a sleek black helicopter approaching from the south. "I think, Marcus," said grimly, "we're about to find out what happens next." Rose watched the helicopter circle the town, her heart sinking. She had enjoyed the few hours when Vincent Blackwood was just Vincent Brooks, a kind man who cared deeply about his dog, and seemed genuinely interested in her work. Now reality was about to intrude, and she suspected that everything was about to change. "Marcus," she said quietly, "whatever happens, I'm glad I helped him last night. Not because of who he turns out to be, but because it was the right thing to do." The sheriff nodded, understanding completely. "That's what makes you special, Rose. You see the person, not the position. I have a feeling Vincent Blackwood recognized that about you, and that's something money can't buy." As the helicopter prepared to land in the field behind the clinic, both Marcus and Rose wondered what the next chapter of this extraordinary story would bring. They had no idea that they were about to witness something that would transform their entire community forever. The helicopter touched down with military precision in the field behind Rose's clinic, its rotors gradually slowing to a stop. From the aircraft emerged a woman in her early 40s, dressed in an impeccable charcoal business suit despite the rural setting. Her confident stride and the way she surveyed the surroundings immediately marked her as someone accustomed to handling complex situations. Grace Chenekaffer had been Vincent Blackwood's executive assistant and closest confidant. For over a decade, she had managed crisis communications during hostile takeovers, coordinated meetings with world leaders, and once even arranged a secret acquisition from a beach in Tahiti. But she had never had to track down her missing boss in a small mountain town where the biggest building was a grain elevator. "That must be his assistant," Marcus observed as they watched her approach the clinic. "She looks like she means business." Rose wiped her hands on her veterinary apron, suddenly self-conscious about her appearance. "Should I change? If she's here for Vincent, you look fine," Marcus assured her. "You're exactly who you're supposed to be." Grace entered the clinic with the purposeful energy of someone who had already assessed the situation and formulated a plan. Her eyes quickly took in the modest surroundings. The collection of thank you cards from grateful pet owners and the emergency fund jar that Rose had never bothered to empty. "Ms. Martinez, I presume?" Grace extended her hand with a warm smile. "I'm Grace Chenekaffer, Mr. Blackwood's assistant." I believe you've met my employer, though he may have introduced himself differently." "Vincent Brooks," Rose said, shaking her hand. "Oh, I understand now that wasn't entirely accurate." "Vincent has always valued his privacy," Grace explained diplomatically. "When he travels, he often prefers to experience places as they really are, without the complications that come with his public identity. I hope you can understand." Marcus stepped forward. "I'm Sheriff Webb. Is Mr. Blackwood in some kind of trouble? We want to help, but we also want to respect his wishes." Grace's expression softened with genuine appreciation. "That's exactly the kind of response that doesn't surprise me, given what I've learned about your community. Vincent contacted me this morning and told me about what happened last night. He specifically asked me to come here because he has something important to discuss with Ms. Martinez." "He's here?" Rose asked, looking around expectantly. "He's staying at the bed and breakfast in town," Grace replied. "He wanted to spend some time observing your community, understanding what makes it special. What he's discovered has affected him profoundly." Over the next hour, Grace shared what she had witnessed during her brief time in Cedar Falls. She had watched Vincent spend the morning at the local diner, where he had conversations with farmers, teachers, and retirees. She had seen him visit the struggling community center, the underfunded school, and the small library that was operating on borrowed time. "In all my years working with Vincent," Grace said, "I've never seen him so engaged with a place and its people. He's encountered something here that he thought had disappeared from the world." "What's that?" Rose asked. "Authentic community. People who care for each other without expectation of reward. Individuals who measure success not by what they accumulate, but by what they contribute. Grace paused, choosing her words carefully. Vincent has built an empire worth billions, but he's realized that in the process, he may have lost sight of what truly matters. Marcus and Rose exchanged glances. They could see where this conversation was heading, and both felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Last night, Grace continued, when you treated Vincent and his dog with such kindness, you gave him something he hasn't experienced in decades. You saw him as a person, not as a brand or a net worth. You helped him without knowing who he was, or what he could do for you in return. Rose felt her cheeks warm. Anyone would have done the same thing. That's where you're wrong, Grace said gently. In Vincent's world, very few people would have done what you did. Demanded payment up front, or if they recognized him, would have seen dollar signs instead of an injured man and his pet. Grace stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful valley. Vincent has asked me to arrange a meeting with you and the town leadership. He has a proposal that could change everything for Cedar Falls. What kind of proposal? Marcus asked, though he was beginning to suspect. The kind that happens when extraordinary wealth meets extraordinary kindness, Grace replied. Vincent believes that communities like this one shouldn't have to choose between survival and their values. He wants to invest in Cedar Falls, but not in the way most people would expect. Rose felt her heart racing. What do you mean? Grace said with a smile, that your simple act of kindness last night may have just saved your entire town. Vincent doesn't just want to write a check. He wants to partner with you to create something unprecedented. A community that proves prosperity and compassion can coexist. As Grace spoke, Rose realized that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't have imagined. The quiet veterinarian who had simply stopped to help a stranger in need was about to become the catalyst for something extraordinary. When does he want to meet? Rose asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Grace checked her watch. Actually, he's waiting outside. Wanted to ask you himself if you'd be willing to hear what he has in mind. Through the window, Rose could see Vincent Blackwood, no longer Vincent Brooks, standing by the fence, gently petting Copper, who was resting comfortably despite his injured paw. He looked up and waved, his expression hopeful and slightly nervous. For the second time in 24 hours, Rose Martinez was about to discover that helping others sometimes brings rewards beyond imagination. 3 days later, the entire population of Cedar Falls, all 847 residents, gathered in the high school gymnasium for what would later be remembered as the most important meeting in the town's history. Word had spread quickly through the small community that Vincent Blackwood, the famous billionaire, was planning to make some kind of announcement that would affect them all. Rose sat in the front row, still struggling to process everything that had happened since that stormy night. Beside her sat 8-year-old Jamie Thornton, whose sick puppy Buster Rose had been treating for free over the past several months. Jamie's family represented so many in Cedar Falls hard-working people who loved their community but struggled to make ends meet. Is the nice man really going to help Buster get better? Jamie whispered, her small hand clutching a handmade thank you card she had created for Vincent. I think he's going to help all of us, Rose replied, though she still wasn't entirely sure what Vincent had planned. Vincent stood at the podium, looking more relaxed than Rose had ever seen him. Gone was the expensive suit from that first night, replaced by simple jeans and a button-down shirt. Copper sat beside him, his splinted paw healing well, serving as a living reminder of how this extraordinary journey had begun. 3 nights ago, Vincent began, his voice carrying easily through the gymnasium. I had what I thought was the worst luck possible. My car broke down on a mountain road in the middle of a storm, and I was stranded with my injured dog in a place I'd never been before. He paused, looking directly at Rose. What I discovered was that it was actually the best luck of my entire life. Because in that moment of vulnerability, I met someone who reminded me of everything I'd forgotten about. What really matters. Vincent went on to tell the assembled crowd about his journey, how he had built a business empire, but had lost touch with the values that originally motivated him. He spoke about watching Rose work tirelessly to help animals and people who couldn't afford to pay, about witnessing a community that truly cared for one another. I've spent the last 3 days walking through your town, talking with your residents, and visiting your businesses, he continued. What I found is something that most places have lost: a real community where people know each other's names, where neighbors help neighbors, where success is measured not by what you take, but by what you give. Jamie tugged on Rose's sleeve. "He talks nice," she whispered, "like he really means it." Vincent's voice grew stronger as he reached the heart of his message. "I didn't come here to change Cedar Falls. I came here to learn from it. But I would like to propose a partnership. Way to ensure that this community not only survives but thrives while keeping everything that makes it special." He gestured to Grace, who stood and began distributing folders to the audience. "In these folders, you'll find details of what I'm calling the Cedar Falls Initiative. It's a comprehensive investment program designed to strengthen your community." From within, Rose opened her folder with trembling hands. Inside were architectural plans, financial projections, and detailed proposals that took her breath away. Vincent wasn't just offering money, he was offering to help them build the future they had always dreamed of. "The veterinary clinic will be expanded into a full animal hospital and wildlife rehabilitation center," Vincent announced. "The school will receive new technology, updated facilities, and an endowment to ensure small class sizes and excellent teachers. The community center will be rebuilt as a hub for local businesses, artists, and entrepreneurs." The crowd murmured with excitement, but Vincent raised his hand for silence. "But here's the most important part: all of this will be owned and operated by the people of Cedar Falls. I'm not buying your town. I'm investing in your dreams." He looked directly at Rose again. "Dr. Martinez, would you please join me up here?" Rose felt her legs shake as she walked to the podium. The entire town was watching, including many people she had helped over the years without expectation of reward. She saw Mrs. Patterson, whose cat she had treated for free. She saw the Morrison family, who had paid her with vegetables from their garden. She saw dozens of faces that represented the community she loved so much. "Rose," Vincent said, his voice warm with genuine affection, "you stopped to help a stranger in need. You asked nothing in return, expected nothing in return. You simply saw someone who needed help and provided it. That simple act of kindness has created ripples that will be felt for generations." He handed her an envelope. "This is a personal gift, not part of the community investment, but a token of gratitude from someone whose life you changed. More importantly, I'm hoping you'll consider serving as the director of the Cedar Falls Initiative, helping to guide this community toward a future that honors both progress and tradition." Rose opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a check for $500,000, but also something more meaningful: a handwritten letter from Vincent expressing his gratitude and respect for her values. "I can't accept this," she said, though her voice was barely audible. "You can and you will," Vincent replied gently, "because it's not really about the money. It's about recognizing that what you do, the way you care for others, is the most valuable thing in the world." Little Jamie jumped up from her seat and ran to the podium, presenting Vincent with her handmade card. "Thank you for helping my town," she said in her clear, sweet voice. "And thank you for being nice to Dr. Rose. She's the best person in the whole world." Vincent knelt down to Jamie's level and accepted the card with the same seriousness he would show to a $1 billion contract. "Thank you, Jamie. And you know what? I think you're right about Dr. Rose." As the meeting concluded and the details were explained, Rose stood at the podium looking out at her community, her family. Anne felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just happened. A simple act of kindness had somehow transformed into something miraculous. But as she watched Vincent interact with the townspeople, answering questions with patience and genuine interest, she realized that the real miracle wasn't the money or the buildings or the plans. The real miracle was the reminder that kindness, compassion, and human connection were still the most powerful forces in the world. 6 months later, as Rose stood in her new animal hospital treating Jamie's fully recovered puppy, she reflected on how a stormy night and a broken radiator hose had changed everything. Cedar Falls was thriving, but more importantly, it was still Cedar Falls, a place where people cared for each other, where success was measured by contribution rather than accumulation, and where a simple act of kindness could still change the world. Vincent visited regularly, always with Copper by his side, and always with the same appreciation for the community that had reminded him of what truly mattered. He had found something in Cedar Falls that all his wealth couldn't buy. A place where he was valued not for what he owned, but for who he was. And it all began with a woman who simply stopped to help a stranger in need, proving that sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest transformations.